The following episode of TOFOP is rated MA for mature audiences. It may contain sexual references, time travel references, allegations of bin misconduct, and mild coarse language. TOFOP advises that this episode is not suitable for anyone under the age of 15 or anyone who thinks a comedy conversation between two old mates sounds like a terrible idea for a show. Minors must be accompanied by a parent or guardian. This is John Deek speaking.
Everyone relax. This is TOFOP's summer series, a best of. I'm Charlie Clausen, and we're in the final week of our best of compilations, mainly because we probably could not scrounge up any more clips and with good conscience claim that they're the best of. But this is a pretty general topic, easy topic, and very familiar topic for anyone who's listened to TOFOP. It's TV and movies. We often have a lot to say about TV and movies. We dedicated an entire a compilation episode to conversations about Top Gun Maverick because that was the movie we discussed most this year. A week after I saw Top Gun Maverick, I saw a film that I felt was almost like the spiritual and creative opposite of Top Gun Maverick when it comes to tentpole movies, and that was Jordan Peele's Nope, which I loved. Everything I disliked about Top Gun Maverick, I loved about Nope. And I know that some people have some mixed feelings. Podcast Mike himself, the man who is cutting this very episode, he was not so fond of Nope. I hope, Podcast Mike, that you revisit it with an open heart and realize it was a terrific movie. But this is me telling Will all about Nope. I went and saw Jordan Peele's new film last night, Nope.
Oh, yeah. What did you think?
I really enjoyed it. I really liked it.
Okay. It's been getting mixed reviews.
In the same way that I did not like Maverick because I think it just delivered everything that, you know, everyone seems to love at the moment. It's like Nope tries to do the complete opposite. Like it's definitely like a tentpole film, and it's trying to be, you know, a spectacle movie. But I think Jordan Peele makes a deliberate attempt to give you something that you haven't seen before. Like he's trying to subvert kind of expectations and stuff. And I loved it. Like coming off the back of Top Gun Maverick, where I felt like everything was so spoon-fed and like, God, like stop, like seeing Top Gun Maverick is like having someone sitting next to you, elbowing you in the ribs saying, hey, remember this bit? Hey, do you remember this bit? Hey, remember that? Remember this? You know, when he says that, remember this? Whereas Nope is more like, hey, we're just going to throw a bunch of shit on the screen and we're not going to explain it. And you try and work out what we're saying or what it is. And we're not even really going to tell you what the end of the film is. There's going to be no exposition. There's going to be no moment where someone comes out and says, well, this is what's been going on the whole time. You just work it out. There's some metaphor and symbolism and stuff. So I loved it. But then
Is that how they came up with the movie when they were pitching it? And the studio head's like, so what's the ending of the movie? Is it going to have an ending? No. Is it going to have a plot that everyone can follow? No. Is it going to have any popular superhero IP that we already own? No.
Well, this is just going to sound like I'm the biggest, you know, bleeding heart lefty SJW. But the fact of the matter is, there was no lead character that was like a straight white man. Like, you know, The two lead characters are African American.
How will I relate to it, though?
One of them's
how can I actually go and see this movie and relate to it if there's not like a straight white man in it?
But it's just like, thank God, like that you're seeing stories and perspectives on like a mainstream movie from a different point of view. And then, like, even someone was saying to me last week, because I was talking about how great Prey was, and it's like, oh yeah, did you know that there's like 5 films that are all like about indigenous cultures that are like the top 5 films in the world right now, and then, you know, Squid Game was last year's biggest TV show. And it's like, oh, well, I guess that is the reaction to the fan service we've been talking about. There is kind of like an alternative being offered up, but maybe it's just not, it hasn't sort of like captured, well, maybe Squid Game was a bit of a phenomenon, but hasn't sort of infiltrated as widely as like Marvel or something like that.
Well, what we might be seeing is that the Hollywood, you know, version, like, you know, the cultural imperialist Hollywood version of what movies and entertainment are. You know, now that the barriers are down, particularly with streaming services and us being able to, like, I saw, I've only watched about the first 15 minutes, but it's a Bollywood film called RRR. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, it's meant to be amazing.
Oh my God. someone sent me just a link. I don't know if it's available yet, whether it's at the movies or whether it's on streamers yet. I haven't had a chance. Just a friend of mine was like, just watch this 15 minutes and tell me you don't want to see this movie. And I watched the 15 minutes and I was like, that 15 minutes is better than most movies that I have seen recently. It was so entertaining. It's like this, I mean, I don't even know, like it's singing and dancing, but also like an action sort of superhero Marvel. Like, I mean, I honestly, I don't really know what the movie is. I only saw like a little bit of it, but it looks fucking amazing. And I think that you're right. It is, that's where you're going to see it. You're going to see it coming out of like South Korea, or you're going to see it, people, you know, obviously the Scandinavian, you know, murder dramas and those sort of things have been big for a while. And the internationalization of what, there was that bank heist show that was very popular. That was I didn't see, but everybody seemed to love. And again, you know, different sort of art from different countries. So maybe what you'll see is Hollywood becomes McDonald's. You know, it's your big, you know, that's what that's going to be. But maybe the rest of the world's going to provide what you're talking about.
That toxic fanboy culture, which has said you can't have, you know, black stormtroopers and, you know, you can't have girl superheroes, and how's an indigenous Native American girl going to take down a predator when, you know, an army of commandos couldn't do it, forgetting that it's all made up. None of it really happened. But if that is like, if you're going to follow that logic to its end, then okay, sure. You don't want us to be in that genre, we'll just go make our own films. And those films will do well because there'll be an appetite for them. Because like after I watched Prey, I did go to see what people were saying online, and that amongst that kind of, you know, rusted on old school fanboy comic book nerd, it was like, oh my God, like they're forcing this political correctness down our throat. And it's like, I don't understand like your protection of these characters in this franchise. You know, it's the same way when Fury Road came out and people were like, oh God, like Max is this bumbling idiot. And it's like, they're just they're just changing the character in the same way, like in comic books, a different artist and a different writer comes in and they're like, oh, let's take this character and we'll turn it into a different genre. Like, isn't that what you want? Like, otherwise you are just getting fucking Top Gun Maverick. It's the same fucking story again and again and again. So maybe that's what we've done is when I say we, I'm talking about the collective. We've opened up a pathway now for, it's like, okay, you're going to shut us out of genre. You're going to shut us out of comic books. We're just going to make our own thing. And then they'll come, the audience will come, which seems to be happening, which is good.
Yeah. Well, the thing about like Fury Road, if you talk about, that's not a character stuck in time. You talk about Top Gun Maverick as being all these characters that are clearly stuck in this period of time. Whereas like Max in Fury Road, he's not a bumbling idiot. Like, I know people like, you know, made that criticism, but he's clearly got severe PTSD, which is like what that character would have from like experiencing what that character had in the universe that you've created. Like, of course he would be. His nerves would be completely frayed and shot to hell on every level. And, you know, he just survives. Constantly is just looking for a way to move on and survive. So it's just that character had moved on that people got mad about. But I think that, I mean, like you said, Jordan Peele, George Miller, there's going to be, you know, movie makers within the system, Christopher Nolan probably to a certain extent, who can still take all those big Hollywood tropes and, you know, capacities to make those movies and do something interesting with them. But you're also just going to see a lot of like really big, you know, I mean, essentially theme park rides that are masquerading as movies.
Yeah, well, I guess that'll be the twin streams, won't it? Is you'll have like people. It's in the same way that when reality TV started, everyone's like, "Oh God, like I can't wait for reality to die," and you know, no, that's not going to happen. Like it's its own genre now. It's created its own stream.
Like, it's a monster.
That's what it is now. So there will always be like Marvel movies and existing IP and stuff, but I guess it's like it's no longer exciting to me because I feel like whatever had not been done has been done now. And it's also like with the rise of visual effects as well, it's like we've seen everything. We've seen, you know, the world blow up. We've seen it freeze. You know, it's not like I would love to see this on camera because we've done it. Yeah. So now you've
seen someone fly realistically, like in a way that looks like a superhero. You're like, well, what else is there?
I mean, I've seen fucking deep fakes of Keanu Reeves and, you know, Tom Cruise doing karaoke and shit. Like, I mean, I'll believe anything. Like, so now it has to come back to story. And I think what I'm realizing, it's like, and I am by no means like an art house snob or anything like that. But just the fact that when I was watching Nope, I was like, I don't know where this is going, and I love it. Like I could sense in the cinema around me, and I did check the Rotten Tomatoes scores, which I think is always like a good, like I think Nope has like 85% critics and then like 68% audience, which I think is a good sign, because Fury Road was like 95% critic and like 50% audience. And like, well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a bit of Charlie. That's a bit of Charlie if you're right there, because I think that the amount of times I've listened to people, especially with Fury Road, I'd sit on discussions or hear people talking about it where they're just like, it's just nothing happens. Like, there's no dialogue. They just drive from one place to the next. I'm like, if that is your deeper reading of the text, and that's fine. Like, I get it. It didn't appeal to you. You want Top Gun Maverick.
I mean, technically, that is what they did.
Yes.
You are right.
Yes.
They did indeed drive from one place to another and then actually back to the place that they came from in the first place. That is actually technically, I guess, if you're only looking at a Google Maps version of the movie, that is what happened.
I'm reading there's a book, I think it's called Blood, Sweat and Chrome, which is just like a collection of, it's the oral history of the making of Fury Road, and about halfway through it. So they interview everyone. And it's amazing, like, how many times they tried to get this movie up and how many times it fell over. But just the way that the unconventional way in which they put it together, like obviously everyone knows it was not scripted, it was storyboarded to begin with. But after they'd storyboarded and they were like, okay, well, we need to start building these vehicles in this world. So they started reaching out to like any artists that they could find online who worked with like reappropriating things like sculptors and stuff like that. And so there's this one guy they're interviewing who was this like, sculptor who lived in Brooklyn. And he said, I just got this like phone call one day from some producer in Australia saying, hey man, like we're working on a new Mad Max film. Can we fly you out to Australia for 6 months and you can just build stuff? And he's like, it was the best fucking gig of my entire life. He's like, I was just in a warehouse. You go into this warehouse, it'd be like 50 mechanics, 30 sculptors. And we're all just going out to junkyards every day and coming back and like, how can we turn these like 5 things into like a car or like, the canopy of a roof? And it's like that. I mean, to me, that sounds like the greatest creative experience ever.
Yeah. Yeah, but there must have been somebody in a studio who was like, we can just green screen all this shit, right?
Well, they talked about that. I mean, there's hilarious stories about the Doug Mitchell is George Miller's producer, and his number one talent, it seems to be like George wants to do one thing and Doug would just go to Warner Brothers and say, yeah, we're going to do it, and then just not do it. And so like Warner Brothers like, we can't spend this much. We have to do it on the green screen. So Warner Brothers wanted to shoot Fury Road on like a length of runway in an abandoned airport just with green screens. And so while like Doug Mitchell was agreeing to that, he was at the same time loading all the cars onto a ship and sending them to Africa. And so Warner Brothers just call him, they go, we just got an invoice for $2 million from some freight company. Did you send all the vehicles to Africa? And he's like, oh yeah, geez, I guess we have. Yeah. Well, what are we going to do? I guess we better shoot the film.
And they're on a boat to Africa now, so be a pity to not go to Africa to shoot this film, I suppose.
It wasn't just about movies this year. We also talked a lot about TV, streaming, to be exact. Will encouraged me to watch the Woodstock 99 documentary. I'd been putting it off for a while because it made me kind of anxious. Like I find music festivals make me anxious in general. Like I still go to them for some reason, and like the first day I always have fun, but then when it gets to like the second day, I always get anxious. And so I always felt like watching Woodstock 99, knowing what happened at that festival, I might find it a bit distressing. And it turns out I was right. It's a insane documentary, one of the most terrifying ordeals for people who were there. You just have to watch it to wrap your head around it. But Will has seen the other Woodstock one as well. There's another Woodstock documentary, and he reckons this is the one to watch. So this is Will and I unpacking Woodstock 99. Hey, I finally watched Woodstock 99.
Oh yeah,
last week.
okay.
No, the Netflix one. I haven't seen the other one. I'm not sure what that one's on.
Trainwreck. Woodstock
right.
99.
And foremost in my mind was your question of when would you have left the festival?
Okay, when would you have left? That's good. Yes.
End of day 2. I think because day one goes relatively okay. That's before, like, it's been one hot day. You've had one vaguely threatening performance by Korn, you know, but even most of the people in the interview said, you know, actually it went off pretty well. We realized it was a different vibe. But day two, when it's like 40 plus degrees, you've had one day of like drinking and drug taking. So you're coming down, you're feeling a bit shit, can't find any shade. A slice of pizza is costing you $15. A bottle of water is costing you $12. I think by day two, and then the day, was it prior to Limp Bizkit or during Limp Bizkit that the fucking the tower comes down, one of the sound towers? I can't remember if it was prior or during, but I think after that show, I would have been like, yeah, I think that's enough. I think there was actually a girl in the documentary who said we've just packed up after night two and got out of there. I think
after they ripped down the sand tower. Yeah, I would have heard about that at home. My friends would have still been there and been like, "You would not believe what happened tonight. They tore down the sound tower because the minute there was no clean water and people were dancing around in sewage, I would have been out."
That was day three.
Nah, they were day two. There was already like the water was pretty fucked by day two.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so I remember Rage Against the Machine doing Big Day Out in like 2008. When is it, Flemington? I think you were there.
I was there.
And people were scaling the camera towers there as well. Do you remember that? There was like a bunch of people climbing the towers. And I remember that thinking it was pretty hairy. But my concern was more that this drunk idiot's going to fall off and die.
Hurt themselves. Not that they were going to tear the tower down, and then set it on fire.
I mean, it's amazing. I went into this documentary assuming, because I'd heard a lot about it and the other documentary, that it's like, oh, okay, this is going to be like a damning indictment on, you know, young white males. You know, they ruin everything. But I didn't come out of it feeling like, I feel like that was like an element of it, but I feel like
it was a pretty decent element of it. Like it was a huge through line, but it wasn't the only thing.
They weren't the only thing. I think that they were the foot soldiers for a very corrupt system. Yeah. Like they basically were just the SS of this fucking completely corrupt music festival that was trading off the brand name of a hippie love-in.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine, because I went to the Guns N' Roses concert that was probably the most equivalent in terms of once you got locked into this, you know, barren space with no shade in 40 degrees and they start charging you water. So I got it. Like I remember I was 15 when I went to the Guns N' Roses concert, and, you know, this was back before kids. You got to remember there was a time when bottled water wasn't a thing. Like if you wanted a drink, you just drank from the tap. And so in 1993 or whenever it was, 94 to 1993, to be somewhere where someone's telling you, hey, you can't drink from a tap, you've got to pay $5 for a bottle of water. That seemed insane to us.
Are we missing an opportunity here? Because this Woodstock 99 documentary, I mean, both of them, this one gives you more of a sense of like that it was still kind of fun. Like what I quite liked about this was because they have a whole bunch of people who were there that were like, it gave a real sense of why people stayed, that they were still felt like they were part of something, that even though things were going terribly, it was like
they survived it,
right? And they like kind of have that memory. You're right. That Guns N' Roses show is absolutely the equivalent of that. You were there. Is there a documentary in that? Surely there's a Woodstock 99 style documentary in that Guns N' Roses gig there.
There was a big retrospective article written in The Age about 4 or 5 years ago where they went and sat down with like 5 or 6 different people who were involved in it. But there could be. I don't think it was there's not as many flashpoints as there were. Like the Woodstock is heaps darker. Like as far as I know, there weren't like a bunch of like assaults and stuff happening at Guns N' Roses.
But I still imagine there was some pretty, like, I mean, because kids were drinking out of puddles and stuff, and like, you know,
I was one of them.
Yeah,
I remember finding because the other thing that fucked up with Guns N' Roses was like getting in and out was really badly organized. So it's just like a few shuttle buses leaving from Flinders Street Station for I don't know how many 50,000 people. And so we were meant to leave. The show finished at midnight or 1 or whatever it was. And then we were there till like 6 a.m. And I remember like just lying on the mud and finding like a half-buried bottle of something and just being like, I'm going to fucking drink this. I don't know what, I'm so thirsty. I don't know what was in it. And just drank this. Could have been urine for all I knew, which is probably Will. Why? I now refuse to wait.
Can I ask you the question about the Red Hot Chili Peppers playing the song Fire? So they go out there.
Yes.
And things are on fire and they choose to play the song Fire. Discuss.
It was an odd choice. And it's an odd choice too, considering like when they were off stage, they had to take a break when all the fires broke out and the organizer was like, hey, can you go out and settle down the crowd? I did think that was strange because I got confused. I thought that like in my understanding of what happened was that they were one of the good guys that went out and were like, hey, you know, everyone just chill out. But it didn't seem like it.
No, it did not seem like that at all.
What about the Fatboy Slim story where he's playing and then these guys come in, they've come in
just drive. They stole a bus, drive into a crowded rave tent in a bus.
It does. Like I've always said about The Simpsons, like what I think they do better than any other show is satirize mob mentality, like how quickly things descend when there are like no rules. And that's what it felt like, was just like when people feel like there is no consequences, they'll go crazy.
I mean, it was, like that moment where you're like, let's steal that bus. And now let's drive it into the fucking rave tent while Fatboy Slim is playing is, it's not people thinking straight. It's fair to say.
So if you're the artist, rather than, okay, you're a punter, if you're Fatboy Slim, like at what point, if you're not being threatened physically, like no one's throwing bottles at you or anything like that, but you can sort of see, God, there's a lot of people in here and I can't see a lot of security and stuff. Do you just go, oh, well, I guess I know what they're doing? Or at some point, do you turn to someone and say, hey, like, I don't know, we should keep playing?
Well, I mean, I thought what you could see from him was what the conundrum would have been as an artist, which was, I think we've got to stop playing because this is a dangerous situation. But if I stop playing, is this going to become a much more dangerous situation? Yeah. Because it feels like me playing might be the only thing that is keeping some of these people from burning this entire place down.
I felt like I identified with him the most because, like, I always give people the benefit of the doubt. Like, I very rarely think things are going to go shit. And so when he saw that van driving into the crowd, his brain initially went to, oh, I guess they have a mobile dancing platform.
Yeah. This is fun. What a fun thing they're doing here at Woodstock. You can apparently just drive a van into a crowd. This is rad. This place is going off. All right. Right like, about now.
That's what I would have done as well. But yeah, it's just that I could imagine being there on the first day, because it did look quite cool on the first day with, everything was open and clean and before the rubbish came. But it's amazing that within 3 days, like what had happened, like some of that footage of them driving in the day after the last day, where it's just like completely dystopian, just like smoking ruins and stuff like that. Are you claiming insurance on that? Like, are you insured for riots if you're Woodstock 99?
I mean, I don't even know how that works.
Because there's some kind of culpability, right? Like the owners of that Air Force base must be like, hang on. To have an airport hangar.
Yeah, they're like, we've been to war zones and this is not appropriate. Like, we will go to other countries, but we always leave our area tidier than when we found it.
I mean, I do remember in 1999 hearing about Woodstock 99, and like, it's, my memory of it was more like Rolling Stone articles saying, oh, it's like a crass commercialization of the spirit of Woodstock, and
which it certainly was.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the irony of it being on an Air Force base, peace and love on an Air Force base. And who's the dude the organizer who did the original one and then he's come back. You know, the guy, he's all like, he's one of those fake hippies where he's like, oh yeah, he's like Steve Jobs. He's like, yeah, I'm a hippie, but you know, he's obviously just an ardent capitalist.
Well, you know what so there's two guys in particular from the original Woodstock, right? So there's the hippy dippy, long haired, you know,
curly haired guy,
curly haired dude, you know, like you said, he's got that very much that Steve Jobs sort of, you know, ethereal, you know, hippie for humanity, but clearly trying to make a heap of money. And then there's the other dude, the one who's interviewed a lot more, you know, and like should stop talking, should stop being in these documentaries, because every time he opens his mouth, he makes the situation worse. Like he says things out loud that he like shouldn't be saying, but if he is saying, should only be saying behind closed doors. Like he's the one who's constantly, every time they bring up like sexual assaults, you know, mentions that, yeah, but the women had their tops off. And you're like, yeah, but again, why is someone letting you say this out loud? Why did you agree to be part of this documentary?
Yeah, and then it's like the Limp Bizkit of it all. Like, there's one journalist who I think he was the young videographer at the time in '99. So
this is what's cool about this version. If you've only seen the documentary version, the other version is this one. Obviously, is told through the eyes of a lot of people who were there in the first place, and a lot of these people have footage, whether it was like personal footage that they were taking, or in this case, like they were journalists working on, you know, like the actual event, and they have like footage from the time and could tell the story. I thought that was really compelling about this version of it.
Yeah. And so one of the videographers, he's sort of telling, because the flashpoint was, I guess, day 2 when Limp Bizkit played their set, and that's when everything fucking went crazy. And he word for word repeats like Fred Durst's little preamble before break stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, because they keep cutting back and forth between Fred saying it, him saying it. I'm like, oh my God, like how significant was this moment in your life that you have like memorized these words? But watching it again, I sort of feel like, yeah, but it's Limp Bizkit. Like you invited Limp Bizkit to this show. Like Limp Bizkit just did what Limp Bizkit do. I'm not saying that, you know, Fred Durst couldn't have gone out and calmed the crowd down, but what do you expect?
Yeah, that's not. He's not Sting.
No,
he's not the man for a calm this situation down scenario, right? Like, yeah, you bought, like that's. I agree with that. That like you are expecting someone to not be what they are. The problem is that you had Limp Bizkit. It's not like they. Well, this is the difference between like what's the song called? Break? Is it called Break Things? Break stuff.
Break
right?
Stuff.
Like. At least that's their song. You knew they had that song. They were probably going to play that song. They probably played that song at every other live gig that they've done. They played Break Stuff, right? So, like, that's the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They did a cover of Fire. That's not even their song, guys. Like, I mean, you don't need to drop this one in. No one's going to miss it.
And how's Gavin Rossdale coming out after Korn? Korn tear up the first night, and then shirtless Gavin Rossdale comes out with his fake Pearl Jam band Bush to do that set. I actually was like, I had such a moment of cringe when it's like, oh no, like here comes shirtless Gavin Rossdale on the crowd is so fired up after Korn. And out comes Gavin Rossdale and Bush to play, and they open with one of their sappy kind of like soft rock songs. I was like, oh God, is this when it happens? Is this when the crowd goes crazy?
That's what I thought was going to happen. But actually,
me too.
Like that's what I thought that story was going to be. And then and I am now the guy who plays Gavin Rossdale because Gavin Rossdale was killed by white teenagers that day. That's what I thought this was actually going to be like. But I actually came out of that with a little bit more respect for Gavin Rossdale. I was like, he
calmed him down.
Calmed them down. I mean, you actually did the response. You, as opposed to so many other people over the weekend who had an opportunity to do the right thing, you went and out there and tried to do the right thing.
Well, I thought this was a really telling moment when they're backstage with MTV. Limp Bizkit comes straight off, and like one of the first things that Fred Durst says is, "It's not our fault."
Yeah,
like. I didn't do it. I didn't do it, kid.
It's the first thing that you have to say is, it's not our fault. I don't know what's going on. None of this has anything to do with me. No, I didn't sing a song about breaking stuff. Absolutely, I did not.
Yeah, or telling all the kids in the crowd to gather up all that negative energy and just let it out.
Yeah. not my fault.
Yeah, man. It's I didn't get as anxious as I thought I was going to, because I'd heard a lot of stories about it, and I'm like, oh, like I found the Fire Festival documentary more anxiety inducing. Like the idea of being at Fire Festival, I thought
I feel like the
a lot
original
worse for me.
documentary is more anxiety inducing than this series, because with this series, because it's just told at a slightly different pace, you have that breakdown of other people telling their individual stories and their own takes on it, that it doesn't feel as like that first initial documentary. When I watched that, I was like, it really did fuck with me. I was like, I don't think I could ever go to a music festival again based on how I am feeling watching this at the moment.
It did make me so nostalgic for the 90s, though. I was just looking at all the fashion and the music, and I was like,
I love that you're the person who watched that and just said, nostalgia, take me back to these good times.
I really did. It's part of my identity crisis. I'm just like, oh God, the 90s, man. Yeah. It was a time when you could burn down, you could tear down a light tower at a concert, and it was considered I mean, there is that amazing moment where it's an amateur footage of like these fucking bogans, or American equivalent of bogans, just like tearing down this mural. Like, you know, there's just like miles and miles of this beautiful artwork done by artists on plywood. And these guys are just ripping it down. And there's some dude filming it going, woo, woo, this is history. Woo, this is history. And again, it's like one of those Simpsons moments. It's like, oh my God.
What do you most miss about that period of time, do you think, if you are nostalgic about it? Like, what is it about that world that, you know, isn't in our current world?
I don't think it's about what was in the world. It was more where I was at that time.
Right.
I think it's more about the fact that I was discovering all these bands, and I sort of, you know, to me it was a mixture of cinema and music. They were the two things I was into, and it was like the indie film boom. You know, it was like Tarantino and Kevin Smith, and, you know, being John Malkovich, and then it was the music, and I don't know. It's just more, you know, that's what happens in life, is you have a period of time where you feel like the world was great and full of possibilities, and then you do your best to stay in that bubble for the rest of your life. And that's why we're in the cultural vacuum. Now, if you know anything about TOFOP, you know that the celebrity who has surpassed Adam Sandler as our most often referenced and talked about celebrity is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And look, this conversation is dated wildly. You know, this is a discussion in the lead up to the release of Black Adam, and the catchphrase, the hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change. We sort of speculated on what was going to happen with Black Adam. Well, now we know. Now we know that DC have no plans to make a sequel, that The Rock is probably out at DC. But this was a more innocent time when we really marveled around the marketing tactics and the brainstorming session that came up with such a clunky corporate speak logline for a movie. So this is Will and I talking about The Rock and Black Adam. I don't know if you know this, Will, but the hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change.
It is about to change.
So Black Adam, they're prepping, and it's such an interesting. I just find him fascinating, obviously. But so most celebrities post, you know, stills from their movies and like promotional material and stuff. He's posting stills and videos, not of promotional material, but the meetings behind the creation of the promotional material. Like his last 4 posts have been videos and photos of him in the Warner Brothers marketing meeting, where it's like him sitting, like it looks bizarre. He's so enormous. He's sitting like at the end of a boardroom table in like this polo shirt that barely fits, just like towering over all these like executives who are sitting on this board table with all the Black Adam merch there. And, you know, on all the screens surrounding the boardroom table are all the different kind of, you know, marketing points that they're going to make and billboards and shit like that. And then there's a really long description underneath where he describes their attitude towards marketing, that, you know, they're not going to try and break it down into specific countries. They want to do a global campaign so everyone feels included. And I'm like, it's bizarre that this is what he's marketing. He's not, most entertainers don't want you to see behind the curtain. They don't want you to see how the sausage is made. He's like, hey, come in. We'll show you how we're going to sell you this ultra commercial product. Like, this is how, I mean, it's almost cynical in a way, right? They say, this is how we're going to get your money from you.
Well, look, one thing I've learned from doing 15 years of Gruen is that explaining how advertisers trick you into buying stuff does not stop people from buying stuff, you know. And I think that, I think there's actually, is it cynical? It's honest. He's at least showing you how it all works in a way that all these other people who are doing the exact same thing aren't. But I also think this is one of the rare occasions where, like, I know that like actors have played obscure superheroes before, but if we're talking about the idea that the entire hierarchy of the DC universe is about to change, right? But The Rock is a bigger character, a bigger recognized piece of IP than Black Adam is, right? This is one of the rare occasions that, you know, so if someone plays Superman, if someone plays Batman, no matter how famous that actor is, like Ben Affleck is a very famous actor, but he is not more famous than the character of Batman. Like normally the character is still bigger than them. You have to get down to the more obscure superheroes, which I guess Black Adam is. But in this situation, Charlie, I don't know if you've heard, I believe in a hierarchical structure in the DC universe. Black Adam's going to be ahead of Superman and Batman. It's all about to change. But at the moment, they have to transition The Rock's global worldwide brand appeal into Black Adam's appeal.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing in these photos and videos, like the way he, like whoever his marketing team is or his publicity team, the way he's got his energy drink brand always like conspicuously placed in the frame. There's a shot at the end of the meeting where they're all toasting with his tequila brand, like always be selling. Like that's The Rock. Abs, always be selling.
Yeah, it's not can you smell what The Rock is cooking? It's like, can you sell what The Rock is cooking? Because he's been cooking up a whole bunch of things and he needs you to sell them.
I get a feeling looking at all that shit that this, I don't think it's going to bomb necessarily as in, you know, it's not going to make any money, but I do not think this is going to work. I was just looking at everything about it. And it's like, there's no magic to this. Like there's no kind of excitement or because I understand what he's doing. Like it's in the same way people, like if you do a podcast ad and you know, say, oh, here's the ad, we read it and you joke around, people are like, okay, well, that's advertising I can get into because you're being transparent and honest. And that's, like you said, you know, he's being honest and you feel like you're being welcomed into his world. But I think it's missing the allure of why people go to the movies, you know, like I want to be taken to another place, not go, oh, there's The Rock. I guess the hierarchy of power in the DC universe has changed.
But I think that's not correct because
Really?
The Rock is pretty much The Rock in every movie that he makes. And he is also the highest grossing actor in the world consistently. So just based on that alone, I just don't think that what you're saying can be true. Like if people are willing to like pay millions and billions of dollars to go and watch The Rock run around a jungle again, I think they're going to do the same thing for this movie. I believe, Charlie, the hierarchical structure of the DC universe is about to change.
Now, if you are a keen TOFOP listener, you may remember that we did an episode discussing if Will had to go off grid, would he be able to do it? And how we could continue doing TOFOP if one of us was living off grid. Well, then it turns out there was a TV show on Channel 7, I believe, called Hunted, in which people tried to evade capture, you know, by people who had like all the surveillance equipment in the world. Will was a big fan. I still haven't seen it, but I'm very familiar with the show. But Will takes me through Hunted.
Okay, so here's what I studied Hunted. I was so repulsed by that show and the idea of that show and our surveillance society and like the glorification of it, but I also could not stop watching it. And mostly it was within mind, how would I go in this situation? And I've learned a lot, Charlie. Firstly, I've got to make friends in the Sikh community because when it comes to a game of hide and seek, you need a Sikh on your side because they are the nicest people and so happy to just...
You mean the religious sect?
Yes.
S-I-K-H, right.
They are...
Okay, right.
Honestly, the greatest people and very much up for looking after somebody within their own community. So firstly, in this scenario, one of the things I really want to put in place at the moment is friends in the Sikh community. I know that's like, it seems like a weird one, but I'm just going to try to make some friends in the Sikh community.
Well, they were out here after the floods in the Northern Rivers. They drove their food truck up here and were handing out food. So it's a good chance you could.
If there is any Sikhs who listen, to this podcast. I would love to just can you give me an intro into the community? That is one of my big takeaways from it. The second thing is that you need potential to be able to change your appearance. Like that's something that is a really big thing because there are so many ways for you to be observed. Like I'd never really thought through disguise as much. I think we've really got to lean into the idea that we've got to be able to have a series of disguises. So like what that means is the most successful people on Hunted, they started with a look that could gradually be changed. So like at the start, I was like, it's weird this show. There's a lot of people with full beards. You know, like on TV, you don't generally see it. Or like it's the Survivor. These guys look like the people at the end of Survivor, not at the start of Survivor. But cunningly, I realized, well, of course, that was because it's harder for you to grow a beard during the time that you're trying to be away. But what you can do is that you can shave a beard during that time. Like, you can shave.
I love the idea of you not realizing that until the competition has started and just sitting in your hiding spot, like furiously trying to sprout a beard.
And we all know how terrible I am at growing a beard. So I've really got to put in a few months beforehand. And then some makeup skills. I think one of the handiest things to have is makeup skills. So the ability to be able to apply makeup, change my appearance in that way is something that I think I really need to develop. So I think that I need to firstly move a whole bunch of clothes, like a wardrobe full of clothes, into the cave. Like previously to this happening, I just need to feel the cave needs to look like a walk-in closet, like a walk-in sort of like cave.
Next top model.
Yeah, exactly. I've got to have like some mirrors with lights around them, that sort of thing, so I can do my makeup properly, and a whole wardrobe in my cave. I think that's going to be very important so that I can throw people off the scent. We were right about the fact of getting out in the middle of nowhere. Like, the more you stay in the city and stuff, the more chance you are that somebody or something's going to observe you on their security cameras and those sort of things.
So on the show, do they show you how easy it is to find someone with CCTV and ATM cameras and?
Yeah, of course, the thing they do on the show that they can't do in real life yet, although shows like this, pave the way for it, is immediately access those things. So on this show, if you were a team of people and you walked into a shop, they'd be like, oh, look, there's a security camera in the corner. We're going to access that security camera footage. Now, of course, a Channel 10 TV show can't just ring up a random shop and say, can we have your CCTV and then immediately have it in real time. They would then cheat it for TV, where the camera crew that were following the people around, they'd use that footage clearly to recreate what they potentially could do. So the things that they could do on the show, it would take much longer to access that particular, ATM security camera or whatever it is than it would. So I think we've got a little bit of a buffer, but you essentially need to, the more you can be off the grid. And the thing is, you don't want to camp in the middle of nowhere because, of course, drones, right? If you're in the middle, if they suspect you're in the middle of nowhere, the immediate thing they're going to do is send drones. So I think a cave, I think that we stumbled on in a lot of ways, a cave in sort of like a forested area, somewhere where you can scavenge for your own needs and supplies, access to a water source, relative cover from drones being able to spot you, away from any sort of surveillance, and keeping those things to a minimum. That was a good approach. So I'm going to say we nailed all that aspect of it. I want to film a cave with some different costumes and some makeup equipment. And then in regard to actually recording the podcast itself, this is where things get tricky, because any sort of electronic communication, that's where you can get intercepted and monitored. So that's where it's hard. So I still think that some sort of blind drop off, or to be honest, meetups, but then you're going to have to throw your tail. So what they did in this show was they'd go through your social media or whatever, and they'd be like, who are their contacts? Who are their primary contacts? We're going to go and surveil the house of this person because they're the most they're in this area. They know this person in this area. They're the most likely person that they're going to contact in this area. So people are going to know that so they're going to be on your tail. So now it's up to your capacity do you think that you would be able to, in your day-to-day life, No. Okay. All right. So let's rule that out. Okay.
I was just thinking about that. Like, is it possible to launder the tape? So just say you have to get a cassette tape to me so I can keep doing the podcast. In my head, I'm like, what if we could train like a pigeon or an eagle? Like you have a falcon, you become a falconer and you train a falcon. And so you record your end of the podcast, and then you get the falcon. There's a train it to drop it off at a certain point. And then we get a third party who has no, like maybe I contact them anonymously and say, hey, there'll be $100 in your bank account every Wednesday. You just need to drive to this field and pick up this package and then just leave it in this other spot. So we just launder it that way, like put another layer in between. So at least if, you know, someone does get tracked or whatever, it doesn't come directly back to me, at least not at first.
Okay. So complicated though to do that training is what I would say. That I feel like that's too, like if we were going to do a falconer, we might as well just have a drone of our own, right?
Oh, that's a good idea. It's got a drone.
One of the things they did quite effectively on the show was create a false trail, like throw them off the scent. So, for example, if I need to get somebody to use, say, like my credit card or whatever in a particular town that was like 2 hours away, and then like two days later you make a trip to that particular town.
Oh, yeah.
That they think then that the podcast has been recorded in that time. Even though you go inside somewhere, they can't get inside. The podcast comes out. They assume it's happened during that time. But what they don't realize is that when you rode your bike to the gym that day, when you went into the gym, you ducked out the back of the gym into the bushes where I was waiting, and we just sat in the bushes, recorded a podcast. You went back into the gym and then just came out the front all like sweaty and stuff, and they didn't know that we recorded a podcast.
How about we set up a fake live show as like a sort of speed style? So
sure,
we have to do it early. So we know you've got like 48 hours. So we go into the bushes, we set up cameras and we record a bunch of live podcasts. And then we make an announcement that, oh, we're doing a live TOFOP. And so the people hunting you are like, oh, great. Well, we'll just wait for the signal. And so we use a VPN fake IP address. We play the episode through that VPN, through that IP address, and so they get taken. They think they're going to, like, you know, the woods in Tasmania or something like that.
Yeah,
that'll work once.
Yeah,
right. And then after that, they're going to be like, well, he's wearing the same T-shirt. They've pre-recorded all of these.
Yeah, but that's fine. Like, that gives us, if we pre-recorded a whole bunch of them, that then gives me a couple of like months in the cave, right, to come up with another plan.
No, well, let's be honest. Like, we pre-recorded 3 because, you know, we get tired. We've got other things we need to do. You've got to get a wardrobe moved into a cave. You've got things to do. So, like, we pre-recorded 3. So we've got
that's still like a
month's worth.
Well, that's still like 3.5 weeks. I've got 3.5 weeks to come up with another.
Do you really
plan.
think that your hunters are going to wait a week to see when the second episode comes out before they make some inquiries? I think they would investigate the first one, realize they've been duped, and then they would just recalibrate their
How
attack.
would you go under questioning? So this is like one of the most important things that I've realized is, like, a lot of this entire plan depends on your capacity to hold up your end of the story when you've got a bunch of like officials like questioning you hard and, like, you know, like making threats to.
It's funny, like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I would have been like, oh, terrible. But I've been watching a lot of leftist, / socialist communist YouTubers lately. Who are very anti-cop. And, you know, a lot of them will play videos of like ordinary citizens, like, this is how you respond to questioning by police, and you don't have to give them this and you don't have to give them that. And I watched this video of a teenager, like he was a teenager in somewhere in the States, and he flipped off a cop car that drove past. Oh, yeah. And the cop came by and, you know, was harassing him and then called for backup, and they were trying to arrest him. And this kid knew his shit so well, was just like, you can't arrest me. I can fucking flip you off. That's free speech, First Amendment rights. I know what I'm doing. And the cops are like, you're creating a public disturbance. It's like, hang on. I didn't create the public. I was walking along the street. You pulled the car over. This is the disturbance now. What you cops are doing now, this is the disturbance. And the cops are like, well, we're going to arrest you. That for what? Wait, fuck you. It starts like, just like, and I'm like, oh my God, this kid is amazing. So if I could just summon some of that kind of, that energy of that 17-year-old fucking socialist that I saw on YouTube, then I could probably do it.
I mean, that's who you really need. like on your side in this scenario is like one of those, or that
cocky teenager.
just a cocky teenager who doesn't give a fuck about authority. Who's just like, what are you going to do about it? Fuck you.
He was literally calling this cop a motherfucker to his face.
You can't do it, motherfucker. I know my
funny.
law.
The
I'm a
cop really
lawyer.
couldn't
I'm
do
actually
anything
like a
because they did not
Doogie.
actually
I'm like a
have-
Doogie Howser of law. I actually know my shit back to front for this scenario. Fuck you.
Yeah, that's right. All right, we're at our final clip of this best of compilation. TVs and movie. We'll finish in a real downer. It's not a real downer, but a film I just didn't like at all. For me, since the Avengers finished, it's been diminishing returns with Marvel movies. In fact, I think that is the commonly held wisdom. And I don't get a chance to watch movies very much. So it's a rare treat when I do. So imagine my disappointment when I sat down to watch Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. In fact, I don't think I even finished it. I can't even tell you what happens, really, because I got so bored and found the film so unengaging that it really put me off ever watching a Marvel movie ever again. Will had also seen it. So this is a good example of when we've come on the show having both seen the thing we want to talk about. So this is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
I have not dipped into a Marvel film since probably
Marvel.
Endgame. And so I was like, oh, let's check out this Multiverse of Madness.
Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
I couldn't get through like half an hour. I thought it was so bad. And I don't know if it's one of these things where
What
I don't know
was
if Marvel
it? What was it that you didn't like about it?
Well, I don't know if Marvel films have gotten worse
They
or
have.
if it's just
So firstly,
they have.
let's just
Okay.
acknowledge that they have absolutely got worse. Yes.
It just everything about it, just like the charm and the casting of the Phase 1 films, like they seem to just nail it every single time. They had it was like the Pixar magic formula.
Mm-hmm.
But this Doctor Strange, everything about it, I'm like, his wig is so fake. Like Benedict Cumberbatch's wig, it was distractingly fake. And then it was just
I believe that the wig is meant to distract you from his accent, though. Like, I think you're meant to be concentrating on the wig so that you're not so.
Why is it that when English actors do they do this kind of they have to get a deeper voice and it's like also he's protecting this teenager in it and he keeps calling her
America.
kid, like he's in like
America, her
Indian.
name is, which
America.
I did not think was on the nose at all. The kid he was protecting, his name was America.
But I just also it just looked shit. It wasn't exciting. There was no. I didn't find him charming. And then it starts getting into like the multiverse stuff, and I'm like, and I'm a nerd, and I dig stuff like this, but I'm like, ugh, who fucking cares? It's an alternate Captain America, and now Captain America's Mrs. Captain Britain, and oh, that's Fantastic Four. Who gives a shit? I don't care. Just give me a story that's interesting. So I did not even make it half an hour, but then I put on the new Predator film, Prey. Have you heard about this?
Hang on, what? There's a new Predator film?
There's a new Predator film, and it's set in like the 1700s, and it's about this Native American teenager who wants to be like a hunter, but like, because she's a woman and stuff, she's meant to, cook and do all that kind of shit. But, she's always hanging out with her older brother and, they go off hunting and they take on the Predator. And it's fucking awesome. It is such a good film. The only thing that I think would have made it better is they do it like they're speaking English. But I read about afterwards, there's a version you can watch where they speak in their, I think it's Comanches, their native tongue. And I'm like, oh, I wish I'd seen, that's the first way I'd watched it, where they just done it like in the native tongue, because it is awesome. It is like such a good Predator film. And it's just, they've been trying to sort of capture that, what the original one and what made the original one so great. And the thing that makes the original film so great is it's really subversion on the slasher film. Like Arnie and all his mates, they start off as like these brawny, muscle-bound guys with huge guns, and then they become the kind of trope of the girl being hunted by Mike Myers. By the end of the film, they're getting killed off and their guns don't mean anything. So this one, they start off with that final girl trope, and so she doesn't have any of the weaponry. So it's just more about how the hell is this girl going to overcome, like with no modern weaponry, with nothing, how is she going to overcome the Predator? And it's awesome. It is such a good film. It is so much fun. And you know what's great about it, Will? 90 minutes long, probably 80 minutes with credits, but like you could watch it in one sitting. There's no fat on it. You don't get bored. They're not doing any fucking fan service. They're not doing this. Oh, because that's the other thing too. I saw Top Gun last week for my birthday. That was a special treat. And I know people love that film. I did not love that film. And I think there's something wrong with me. I think I'm broken. But then I see Predator and I realize the difference is like Top Gun, I understand technically well made and stuff, but I'm just over fan service. I'm over referencing older films. And oh my God, that's the line from the original film. Oh, there's Val Kilmer. Oh, look, his son is wearing the same shirt that Goose. Like, there's all this shit through it that it's like, I don't give a fuck. They do one line in the new Predator film, which is if we bleed, we can kill it. I'm like, okay, I mean, I get it. You have to do it. But that is it. The rest of it, it's just completely new, or at least a new take on the same thing.
So I haven't seen Top Gun, and I keep hearing people talk about how good it is, but I feel like I'm going to be a bit like you in that I'm not. I feel like the fan service stuff will annoy me, and B, I don't think I have enough affection for the original film that I will enjoy. Like, it's actually not serving me. I'm not enough of a fan for the fan service to be of service to me.
Well, I think, like, it's because I went and saw it with VK, and we were both excited to see it. And look, I like the first one, but I'm probably like you. I don't know it off by heart. But you know enough of it. Like, there's enough iconic kind of scenes.
Yeah.
But it
feels the need for speed.
Yeah, but it almost feels like a spoof. It is so slavishly, dedicated to the original, like music cues and everything like that. You sort of like, hang on, what are they doing? Like a remake? And then there's some just bizarre character choices, which I guess, make people happy as an audience member. But if you think about it logically for a second, makes the character insane. So like Maverick, in the 30 or 40 years since the first film, has not progressed as an individual, like has not grown, still wears the same clothes. Like if you knew someone like that in 40 years was still wearing the same bomber jacket and riding the same motorbike, like, wouldn't you be like, fuck, this dude is like, he's stunted. Like he has an inability, he's having a midlife crisis. He has not got over his 20s. He still dresses and acts like he did in his 20s. And
do they not explore that, though? They don't explore any aspect
of that. It's just accepted. Maverick, he's just Maverick. He's just like, the name says it all. He's a Maverick.
It's kind of the least Maverick thing to do. Just
stay exactly the same.
Stay exactly the same. He's a real Maverick in the way that he hasn't changed in any way.
I always think of that line in The Wedding Singer where, Adam Sandler has that best friend with a mustache who's like the womanizer and stuff, and he wants to be Fonzie. And then at the end of the film, his friend confesses, look, you know what happened to Fonzie? He got old. No one wants to watch a TV show about a 40-year-old guy hitting on chicks. And that's exactly what Maverick is in the new Top Gun. It's like, you're almost 60. Why are you still wearing that bomber jacket and riding a motorbike and acting like, this kind of roguish kind of charming dude who can't get, like, if you couldn't get your shit together in 40 years, it's on you. Like, it doesn't make you some like interesting rebel who plays by his own rules. Like, I think that works when you're in your 20s, but when you're 60, it's like, this fucking guy's a basket case.
He never developed at all. He never grew. Like, the one thing that's essential to human beings is going on some sort of journey of growth and discovery.
But they make that his kind of strength. Like, that's the thing that makes him, they have to, there's a suicide mission and he gets asked to come in and, lead this group of new young fighter pilots. Yeah. But the other thing about it, and this is sort of minor spoilers, but I think from the trailers you can get it. So who's the dude from Whiplash? Miles Teller.
Miles Teller.
He plays the son of Goose, which is fine. Conceptually, from a plot point of view, all right. So there's some emotional kind of stakes now. Like, one of the students is teaching is Goose, and Maverick feels responsible for the death of this guy's father. And so
I would have preferred if Maverick was visited by the ghost of Goose.
Well, didn't we pitch The Evil Goose Arises? That was that Goose never died.
I like the idea of the ghost of Goose. The goose. Like, he has this goose appears and speaks to him. You've got to change, Maverick. You've got to change.
Oh, I like the idea of a remake of Ghost with just an all goose cast. Just call it Goose. And that's it.
One more week of best ofs. Oh no, sorry, that is it. That's the last best of compilation. We're going to be back next week. So thank you for sticking with us over the summer. We hope you had a good break. All new episodes of TOFOP are coming soon, and don't forget brand new episodes of Two Guys, One Cup, My Club. Available on the listener app leading all the way into the season proper in March. So it's a good way to keep your AFL fires or AFL adjacent fires burning until the real stuff starts. But that is it. I'm Charlie Clausen.
How long? Not long. Everyone relax.
This podcast is a TOFOP production.
Head to tofop.com for more.
Cool things for cool people.